All right, guys, welcome to this video. Stephen Howe here, and I have a good friend of mine, Parker Mott, on the call here, and we're going to be talking about how to wholesale houses in Canada and some of the key differences. And so Parker has such a cool story here. So we've set up this kind of interview back and forth, just to kind of share his journey with you, and I know it's going to be immensely valuable. So, guys, welcome to this video here. Again, how to wholesale houses in Canada, some of the differences. We get a lot of questions on this, and Parker is an awesome resource. So, Parker, man, how you been?
I'm doing great, Stephen. How are we doing in Dayton?
I'm doing awesome. So you
Good.
are in Ontario, Canada, or just outside
Yes.
of Toronto, I believe, right?
Right now, I am actually. I'm about an hour outside Toronto, but I do work with my partner out there in Toronto, in North York specifically. For people from Ontario would know where that is. But yes, I'm right on the cusp of Toronto, and that's where we're doing a lot of our deals.
Excellent. So this is a question, with the YouTube channel here, I get a lot of comments, a lot of questions like, Stephen, this sounds amazing, this wholesale phenomenon, wholesaling houses as a way to generate revenue and create wealth. Is it possible in other countries? And so just to answer that question, I do have a couple of students actually doing this virtually from Israel, and
Wow.
also worked with people in different countries. So a lot of it, yes, is in the United States, but it just goes to show that yes, this absolutely can be done. And so, Parker, why don't we kind of share, how our paths, and I'll kind of let you take the lead on this. Is
Mhm.
how did our paths kind of cross, and just how did you get started in real estate, and what were you doing before real estate?
Yeah, for sure. So how we cross paths is definitely interconnected to how I got started. So what I mean by that is, beforehand I was in film, so I was doing a lot of film criticism, mostly in Toronto. So working out at film festivals, Toronto International Film Festival is one of the biggest film festivals in the world. So I was doing a lot of coverage out there and working for online publications and freelancing my stuff and getting paid a little bit, but it just wasn't. Film criticism is not a very lucrative profession, so I loved doing it, but it just wasn't putting the food on the table. And I made a few short films on the side, directed those and wrote those. It was fun. I got those financed, but again, it wasn't a way to a happy, comfortable lifestyle. And I was a little bit job averse. I didn't want to have to get into the 9 to 5 grind. I'm lazy that way. I just wanted to find a way to like work. Like, how can I work at home? Because when I was a film critic, I worked at home. I didn't go to an office. I didn't
Mhm.
have the benefits package, right? So it was trying. I think I was sort of I enjoyed that lifestyle. I wanted to find a way to keep doing it. So I got kind of interested. I'd watched some movies, incidentally, that were Inside Job, which is not really a good sort of, I guess, depiction of the financial sector, but or even a film like The Big Short, or like these movies just about kind of the bravado of making money, being smart with your money, and just like houses, and just it kind of got into that whole world, just through kind of a very kind of glorified way, but. Then I started reading like Robert Kiyosaki and the usual suspects when it came to real estate. And then they kind of mentioned like how this is a great way. There's a lot of tax benefits to being in real estate. There's just so many ways to make money, and you're not dependent on an employer's decision about whether you're going to stay in this job long term, and you have more control.
Right.
So I was like, oh, this is interesting. So that kind of segued to wholesaling, which was just something. It was kind of like a thumbnail on YouTube originally that was like wholesaling. I'm like, okay, what's this? Click that, and then watched a video with some guy. I don't remember his name. He was American, and he was talking about the basic nuts and bolts. And just started clicking through, and it was probably 2 or 3 clicks, Stephen, when I got to one of your videos, and you were talking about probate a lot. And it was about an hour and a half video. I watched all of it. It was like I think it was like 1 a.m. And I was in Florida, funny enough, at the time. Great market for real estate. And I'm like, wow, like this is beautiful content here. And this guy's giving all this information about, how to contact lawyers. And you had like a whole letter that you wrote, and you showed that in the interview that you were doing. So I'm like, well, this is really interesting. So I was just like kind of devouring hours and hours of getting all this content and learning it. And I kind of became a quasi expert theoretically on like the American wholesaling real estate market by the time I'd left Florida and gone back to Toronto. So that's kind of how I got into it. And so really, you were kind of like one of my first like YouTube mentors, because I watched a bunch of your videos, and that was like, okay, this is doable. And just the way you were explaining it, it fit into my sort of what I'm capable of. I knew it was my skill set, but there were things needed to be honed. I needed to learn more about real estate. I was a pretty noob when it came to really understanding how much things cost, or estimating renos, the market in general. I knew nothing about the Toronto real estate market except it was really hot.
Uh-huh.
So that was pretty much my portal in. And from there, it's just kind of taken off. And I've been following, and I've been other mentors more locally now that I'm actually in the city, and they get the Canadian market, and I learn from them, which we'll get into. So that's kind of how it all began.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, film critic turned real estate investor.
Yeah.
How cool is that? Like that, I've always just thought about that. Like film critic, that's it's so cool. So, like, I've never met a film critic, so this is cool.
There we go. Yeah,
um,
Roger Ebert, unfortunately, I don't think he had a lot of real estate investments. So
right.
one of the big film critics out there. So.
So, how long ago was this transition, Parker? Have you been doing real estate 5 years, 10 years? Is this just been a couple months? Just for people wondering out there, how long ago has this been?
So the good news for anyone who's just starting out is that I've only been this in a year, and I'm actually doing, and humble brag, I'm doing pretty well right now. So like, it only took a year, really, for it to really get the ball rolling. And I haven't been doing this, little odds and ends and picking at this once in a while. Like, this has been pretty much a full-time job for about a year. It's not get rich quick or any of that, and I'm by no means rich, but even just to make some money, that doesn't happen quick, unless you're really lucky or something. You just get a great score, but.
Yeah.
It's, Steven, I'm sure you relate to that. You have to, be grinding. You're loaded with doubt at the beginning. You could argue there's a low point of entry for wholesaling, but there kind of really isn't, because you can discover it and think it's easy at first, but actually to follow through and get deals and negotiate and get all the skill sets that are required to actually make this a full-time living.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that takes time, and I think a certain type of person as well. And like, you have to be committed to it. You really can't do this like, half-arsed. You just can't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. Like it really is like a low point of entry, but at the same time, when you factor in the mental side of it and the perseverance, I mean, there is that 60-90 day cycle of like getting up, getting the marketing,
Yeah.
getting things coming in, learning how to talk with the leads, falling down a little bit, and just till the actual money comes into your bank account. It really is a mental game for a while. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's not a get rich quick thing, but it's so proven that it does work. And I think so many people get started and they're not fully committed, or they're like, I just want to see if this works. And so I remember when we first started speaking, and then you set up the call with me, and we did that free strategy call. And so that was awesome talking with you. And I could tell back then, like I was like, man, this guy is serious about doing this. And that's just incredible. So let's talk just briefly about that, Parker. Like, was your mindset, a year ago? You've had, a great measure of success in this last year. What were some of those doubts and fears that, as you were starting to dabble in this, as you were starting to, I guess, take some action, like you said, go to YouTube University? What were some things you were thinking about, like, doubts, fears, and just where your mindset was when you were gonna, commit to doing this?
Yeah, I think we're all intrinsically a little lazy, right? There's always that part of us that's like, oh God, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta go networking, I gotta, put in money for marketing potentially, and you just think of all the little things you have to do incrementally to achieve that success. I think that was my biggest hurdle to start off, because I also, it was a lack of knowing. I just
Yeah.
didn't really fully get it yet. Like, I'm like, okay, I just didn't have the confidence really to feel like I could get from A to B, and that A to B made it feel a lot wider than it really maybe was. So I think the starting off was just the lack of confidence. Questions of does this work? I think is another thing, is I didn't know about Canada. I'd seen your success in the United States. I'd seen other wholesalers, and I'm part of some forums where people are flashing their checks all the time out in the States of how much they're making, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, so it can be done. Can it be done in Canada? Because there's not a lot of talk about wholesaling in Canada, for
Right.
reasons we'll get into after. But that was probably my biggest, I don't know if it was a concern, but it was my insecurity starting off was, is this doable? Can I do it? And it's like, how do I get the resources? I have to now call realtors. They're not going to take me seriously. Oh my God. So there was a lot of like, just how do you even really get started? That was the hardest part. And then once that was achieved, not through a lack of work, then it kind of, it started to solve itself, because that means you are sort of solving your own, you were figuring it out. So things just try to reveal themselves naturally. So I think a lot of people, even if you're in the States, you'll relate to that, because I'm not saying it's easy in the States. It's just a lot different. I would argue it's harder in Canada, which isn't the same necessarily saying the same thing.
Right.
Because it's hard in the States, I'm sure. Like anything you have to work hard for, but in Canada, there are reasons that I can highlight where I think it's very challenging to really get it going. So there's definitely we talked about the low high point of entry thing. Like I think there's a lot more wholesalers in Canada that just get flushed down the drain really fast, because it's just there's again lots of obstacles, and you have to be really kind of smart and proactive, and you need to network, and you need to know the right people, and there is we can get into that, but that's
Yeah,
kind of where I would
absolutely.
say.
Very, very interesting. And I just wanted to comment too on what you said just a few minutes ago, like that entrepreneurial spirit that you have. Like I was the same way, like watching those exact same movies, starting to read some of the books. I mean, this is back, when I was in the corporate world, 2007, 2008, starting my real estate career, reading the book that had just come out around that time, The 4 Hour Work Week, reading
Right.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that type of stuff. But
Right.
no, like when you get started, I think it's, and I appreciate Parker, you mentioning some of those things, because it is such a mindset thing, because you start to, doubt, like, is it possible? And, you're a smart guy. You don't want to like waste your time. And none of us want to waste our time. None of us want to do something that we can't fully, see the end, or we doubt ourselves, or we don't want to look foolish. We don't want to like put all this effort into something that, really doesn't make sense. So I just
Right.
want to acknowledge that. Like, I totally get that. It was the same for me. It's like, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel and do this in a smart and strategic way.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so let's talk about where so that's where you were a year ago. Let's talk about like where you are kind of now, maybe some of the successes you've had, and then let's bridge the gap.
Mm,
After we'll fill in the middle there, kind of how you got there, and take
right.
people through that just a little bit. So
Yeah, for sure. Because bridging the gap is obviously like, because right now I could say is where I'm at now is obviously I'm very like I'm comfortable. I've got my confidence now in doing this. I've spoken to so many sellers. Like my job, I'm partnered with a guy right now. I'm his acquisitions manager, which is a wholesaling effectively, but I'm acquiring
that's
his properties.
excellent.
So I'm negotiating all the time with sellers. It's second nature now. Like the nerves are gone because it happens so many times. It's always a little tense when you're getting into the numbers. You can't really get over that. I'm sure you understand that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but right now it's just kind of like become second nature, because I've stuck at it for so long. This is what I just said. People starting out is just like keep at it constantly, go through the failures. That doesn't mean that's not anyone saying you're not cut out for this. It's just that's part of the process. And then when you get to the other line, you actually start getting deals that work, and people agree to your offers, and contracts go through, and things are closed on, and you get buyers, and the list starts to expand. Then it really becomes like, oh, that was not too bad when you're done,
Yeah.
when you're at the end. And then it's like, yeah, because you have the confidence now. So it's all it's so mental. It's so mental.
Yeah,
A
you
lot of
see
it.
it come full circle, and then you have the confidence because you know what it's like on the other side, and you've
Yeah.
seen the full cycle of things happen. And then you realize, once you overcome objections and you're talking with sellers, the conversation a lot of times, especially with motivated sellers, is going to go in one of like six directions. And then once you kind of understand some of the common, questions and rebuttals, that part becomes a little bit easier. And you realize that, hey, they're not rejecting like me as a person. They're not saying like you're doomed like as a person. Like they
Right.
might just not be interested in your offer. And you realize, okay, like I survived that. I'm gonna be okay and
Right.
move forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to highlight, because a lot of wholesalers, and I'm like this as well. I still am a little bit, but I'm obviously better at it now than I was 6 months ago. But and this is wholesalers I'm talking about. Like you obviously, especially when you're starting out and you're so close to that first 10 grand or something, and it's just something's happening, or you have a disagreement, or maybe you call a seller and they won't give you their price because they don't trust you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had wholesalers burn deals, myself included, on just getting caught up on things that you have to take the high road on always, right? Because you're
Yes.
dealing with
Yeah.
people who are stressed. It's not about you. That you've just come in their life. They don't even know you. Like, so why should they honestly, they don't even have any reason to respect you necessarily. So
Mm-hmm.
you're talking to them. You have to prepare yourself for tension, and problems that you need to solve and not get caught up in, because then you're just adding more problems to their life. Why would they want to wholesale with you, right? So there's you have to have a bit of a thick skin for sure. Which I'm thin skinned. I fully admit it. I'm not a thick skinned person. So I have to like train myself, you know, because I've had sellers yell at me and stuff like that. Not because I did anything, just they're stressed. They're projecting
Right.
or something, right? So
Absolutely.
you know, you have to, so there's a lot of that that you deal with. So yeah, that was kind of the main, that's one quality I really insist upon new wholesalers is like be calm, take the high road, know you're there to solve the problem, not be part of the problem.
Mm,
And to
like,
not get emotional. Like just don't get emotional. That happens so often with other wholesalers because I'm actually starting to, I wouldn't say I'm mentoring, but I'm helping out some other wholesalers a little bit. And they say, oh, the deal's dead. I'm like, well, what happened? And they said, oh, we had gotten an argument. Or I'm like, dude, call him back. Like, don't let it burn. This is 20 grand on the line. If he, worst case, he just says no, you know, it's over, you burn the bridge, and then fine. But just you don't just call it quits on it because of an emotional exchange or just yeah. So I don't want to go in circles on that, but that's basically.
very powerful tip, Parker. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
So yeah, so what are a couple things? I know you've reached out on Facebook and you were sharing some with me. What are some of the things you've accomplished over the last year? Like just to give an idea of people like where you're at right now.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. So accomplished. We've done a lot. So basically, how I can preface that is I'm working with a partner right now who's really my technically my boss. Like he's my superior to this because he's got more experience. He actually does flipping as well. So if we get deals that are really good or we can't find a buyer for it, but it works for us, he'll just close on it.
Yeah.
So he does, and so I'm finding these deals for him. So he'll actually go apart and flipping it. So that it's a great, beautiful thing because it gives us, I think, a little bit more leverage with our buyers and with sellers, because we can basically say, look, we're coming to your property, has X, Y, and Z of problems with it. We'll give you a firm offer. No one else is going to give you a firm offer, but we know we can close on this property. So we're going to give you this firm offer, no conditions, no
Mm,
financing conditions or no inspection, and it's a done deal. Yes, it's less than you're going to retail it for, but you're going to get this done now and without any worries that we're backing out.
mm-hmm.
So that's really powerful. We don't really necessarily have to do partner approval conditions all the time, unless the deal is really tight and we just want to get it under contract.
Yeah.
Um, so there are instances, but that helps us. We have the option of flipping it ourselves. So basically, in a kind of a capitalistic way, that gives us a bit of leverage with our buyers when we come and they might want to negotiate down the price with us, our wholesale fee. And we can say, look, we might flip this ourselves. Like, do you want this or not? Like, we still think it's a really good deal for
Right. We could
you.
focus on it ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do it ourselves, and we're not gouging. We make sure that the spread is there.
Yeah.
But so just it's innate of any investor they want to negotiate. So we basically say like we'll do like you said we're going to take this on or you can buy it, and so that really helps us. We can get really the best fees we want that are still fair for the end buyer because we're not looking to basically eat up all the spread and then give them a raw deal. But that helps us. So that we've been doing really well that way, and our buyers are really happy. Like I don't want to create the impression that we're taking advantage, but we had one out in Cambridge, Ontario recently that I can talk a little bit about. We've now assigned it. It's gone firm.
Okay.
Um, but basically, I won't. We can get into the details later. But to give you a sense of the accomplishments, is that we found this deal. Seller basically, she had broke her leg. She wasn't really wanting to do the showings and all that, going up and down her 2-story home. I explained her up front exactly what we were doing. I even gave her a rough offer, and she
Mhm.
was amicable to that. And she said, "Come through. We'll hear what you have to say." So then you kind of just did the rest of the building rapport that you all know about. You know, doing all that from there, walking through the home. We got under contract, and then we put it out to the buyers list, and that one went like a hotcake. It was unbelievable. Like we got so much interest, and then the buyers we got it for really the best fee that we wanted on that. And then the buyers were saying, "Hey, that was great. Like keep sending us more deals." Like because it's hard. Like I'll get into this again in a bit, but Ontario, it's hard to find good deals. You're not going to find them on the MLS. I'm not. I don't. Okay, maybe I won't say never, but it's almost. It's rare. It's very rare.
Oh yeah.
Um, just because basically, if you have a home that's going for 550, it's a fixer upper, and probably the renovated comps are like 600, right? And you have 50 grand reno. How are you making money on that? But that's how they price it on the MLS. And even if they don't, they go in multiples to that price a lot of the time because there's just demand. People are desperate for flips.
Mm-hmm.
So flippers will overpay for it on the MLS. So basically, what I'm getting at here is that there's such a high demand for these good deals that we really, when we do find them, I think you said this as well in the video I watched with you, is that when the deal's there, you don't have to worry about negotiating. Like, people are going to get it. Like, it will speak for itself. If buyers are really haggling you and all hemming and hawing, and you know they're pretty good buyers, you know that it's probably your deal and not them, most of the
Exactly.
time.
Oh yeah, and that's a big thing. And just to talk briefly about that, and then I want to go
Yeah.
back to your story here. Is with buyers, like having a quality deal in the first place is awesome. I remember when I got started, I was doing some marketing, generating some buyers, and I remember having these awesome conversations with buyers and building rapport and finding out, do they do rehabs, do they do rentals, what's their budget, how many can they close, what zip codes. And I remember telling them constantly about all the amazing deals I was gonna have. And then I'm like, okay, like there's only so much of that. And then after a while, they're like, okay, buddy, like bring me a deal. And so I think it's just so powerful, like to really focus on the marketing. And when you have a great deal, like you said, there are so many hungry buyers out there that are scouring the MLS, that are just like looking for deals. And if they are legitimate, like rehab or flipper, they know the numbers, they know a good deal from a bad deal. And so when you present them a real deal, not a hypothetical deal that you actually have, they're instantly going to be like, man, this is a deal. And they're going to see the 30, 40, 50 grand in potential profit, and they're
Yeah,
going to be all over that. It's going to speak for itself. So that's not to
it's
say that
true.
the people watching this video that you shouldn't go out there and talk with people and network and tell people what you're doing and have conversations. That stuff is important and you should do it. But it's to not get so caught up in the doubt and the fear of like, well, I don't have
Yeah.
any connections, I don't have any buyers. Like, it is important to go on a little bit of faith to say, you know what, like I am going to become a marketing machine and go
Mm.
after deals that are not on the MLS, that are off market. And I'm going to like, and the way that you look at it is like, I'm serving these end buyers a deal on a silver platter, and they're not having to go all over town scouring, looking for deals. They're going to be so grateful. And there, a lot of times the good buyers are not going to be bickering over a little bit of price here and there. They're going to
For
be so
sure.
appreciative that you brought them this deal.
No,
So
yeah, those
yeah,
are
so
great
go ahead,
points.
man. Yeah.
No, no, that I can't really add to that. You've covered it. Like, that was, yeah, that's exactly how it is. Like, your value is finding the deal. I mean, we could flip it, so that's also our value, I guess, but that doesn't help the buyers. But it's when we go out and we're marketing, like you said, you're being a marketing machine. And quick segue, but the people say, oh, you can do a wholesaling, no money down. It's like you can do it you can make all this money and barely pay anything. Not maybe in the States, I don't know, but in Canada, very hard. You need money. And I want to get into some of that later, but you need somebody for the marketing, especially other reasons that I can get into. And when you start generating, you need the pipeline full. And then you're gonna get tire kickers. It always happens. People who have their home listed for 450 and will sell it to you for 440. Like, it's just, that's not gonna happen, right? But I'll cut out the commissions and we'll make it work. No, that's not gonna work. So, but when you do get those gold mines or you get a good deal, it's off market. Exactly. I mean, the buyers love you for that. If the deal is there. You don't want to waste people's time. And I think we've got to the point that we've almost don't ever waste anyone's time. There might be one where we knew it was tight and we tried, and then we got into caught with the haggling and all that. And we take responsibility for that. Like, that's us. That's not their fault because they're putting the risk. We're not even closing on it. So, I get that. We have had scenarios, and those actually usually we did get an assignment worked out. But the firm ones are great. Sometimes you just get it and the spread is there. It's a walk in the park. And I'm sure you've had those. It's just a bird in the hand, and it's
Oh yeah.
often the bird in the hand deals are sometimes the best deals. Like, not just best in terms of you had fun, but find like monetarily the best deals. And then the ones that were just grueling and problems and just like ripping your hair out are like the little thin spreads that you're just trying to make work. So
Absolutely. Some of my largest spread deals have been the easiest deals. And then some of the smaller
right.
deals are like exactly like you said, the headaches where it's like, oh my goodness, like, yeah. So
It's
what I
true.
heard you say a minute ago, Parker, I think it's very important. And it's, you spend a lot of time pre-qualifying leads and not
Yeah.
wasting people's time or wasting your own time for that matter.
Mhm.
Before we get into some of the specific differences between Canada and the States here as far as wholesaling houses, just a second here on pre-qualifying and how you maybe go about doing that, because
Mm,
that's such a powerful tip. The
it
savvy
is.
investor, the intermediate to advanced wholesaler gets to the point, they, not that they're rude, not that they're dismissive of people in any way, shape, or form. It's just, you know how to source through the leads a lot faster. So maybe any tip that you can give people, or just share like your process a little bit.
Yeah, I've actually started writing a script because I've been reading a lot of Grant Cardone, have you read Grant Cardone?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about pre-qualifying and asking the hard questions, which you just got to do it. It's a sales job, a lot of wholesaling, right? Is you need to you're like a detective. You have to figure out the situation here. Is motivation there? What are they looking for? Like you really start off as almost like a psychiatrist at first or something when you're on the phone with these sellers because you're trying to figure out their mental state before you really get to price. Like never go to price right away. You're going to price yourself out because it's probably going to you're a wholesaler. You have to get deals. They're not going to understand. You have to present the value first. So I think pre-qualifying, getting to that, the key is I think what I do, I hear it's not what I'm saying, it's what they're saying. That's first of all is how you pre-qualify. So hearing the words that they're using, it really is that like almost like it's down to the syllable. Like how are they speaking? What are they highlighting when they're talking about it? Are they if they like, for example, I knew we got one deal, we wholesaled this one where the first thing they said to me was, "Do you buy as is?" Was the first thing they said to me, and I said, "Boom, this is a deal." I knew right away. So I
Yeah.
just
Yes.
I drilled in on it because I knew because I knew they were focused on there's a problem in this house. A retail buyer is going to be scared of it. Can you solve the problem? I knew that's what that meant. So I just drilled on the as is thing, pressured it, knowing that was the value they were looking for, and we got that deal. So
Do you
one
remember
where
the
we
spread on that deal?
so basically actually so that one we've done this a few times is um so what happened is my partner closed on that one.
Okay.
He's doing a buy and hold with it because he likes that market. He thinks there's a lot of appreciation. It's a lower price point condo that those condos have been going up like 20% in the last year. So he's confident with that market. It doesn't need a lot of work. So he's basically going to rent it out, and he paid me basically a projected wholesale fee that we would have made on it that we negotiated together. So for that, like I didn't make a lot. I think I just made like $2,000 on that one. But still, that's like I'm fine with $2,000 for literally just going to a property and shaking the hands and doing a contract, right? So it required only a couple hours of my time. So that's like almost like $500 an hour. Who's going to complain about that, right?
Exactly.
So so anyway, so there was that deal. So another one where this happens all the time. This is the majority of the calls that you're going to get if you're doing what I'm doing, or if you're wholesaling like Steven is you're going to get people who call and say, hey, I have my house listed right now, and I'm just want to sort of, it hasn't sold, and I'm just trying to get my options. They say options all the time. That's a common one. Or do you pay market value? Or I don't really want to do the realtors. They're charging 5% plus. It's ridiculous. I'll cut out the realtor commissions. Can we make something happen? And you don't really sense really any problem necessarily in their life. They're just trying to cut corners with the sale.
Yeah.
That's not to say you can't do the deal, because everyone has problems, or there's disadvantages to listing that are universal that you could bring up, right? And that might work for you, but that's quite common. I get a lot of those calls of people who are just they're not motivated. They might be in a few months, but at the moment they're looking for a quick deal, and they're trying to kind of cut corners, and those are harder to squeeze. But when you get the pre-qualifying is really what they're saying. To get back to that, it's not what I'm saying. Questions you could ask though to pre-qualify, because you do need to ask some questions because you are trying to get information. Is the home listed? If they haven't really got into that, like figure out like, is it listed? Why are you selling? Is a big one. When do you want to close by?
Yeah.
What happens if you don't sell? That's a big one. Those are key questions. Oh, I'll just rent it. Okay, well they're not motivated. So. And you
Yeah.
could convince them the problems with renting. Does the tenant, leave last minute and you're paying for the property now, but that's hard. You're getting into their personal stuff, and I don't really like doing that.
Right.
But so those questions, those 3 or 4, I would really encourage wholesalers, intermediate, experienced, new, ask those, because that really gets to the bottom of their situation pretty fast. So if you're dealing with a lot of deals, you can kind of like just put them on the back burner a little bit. I'm not saying ever like forego a lead. Actually, one more important one to highlight is if you get to this point, it's a little bit of a personal question, but I think it's important to ask the seller. if maybe not right off the bat, but a few questions in, is how much is owed on this home. So why I would ask that question, especially, well, actually, this is true in the States as well, actually, maybe even more so, but people just are underwater. They owe too much. It's going into foreclosure, which can be an opportunity, foreclosures, but there might not be equity there for you to capture. You're right. So you're kind of, it's going to be too long. They have to bring money to the table. It's just going to be such a headache. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah.
You generally need equity. Do you agree with that, Stephen? That the home, it does need to have some. There needs to be a difference between what they owe and what it's worth for you to really come in there and capture the equity.
Yeah, yeah. I personally, if there's not equity, it's not something I do. If I feel they have a pain point, and there could be, some foreclosure stuff going on, I'm gonna find the best foreclosure person in my area, refer the lead to them for some
Yep.
for some monetary value there. But yeah, what you said about pre-qualifying is so huge, Parker. Like the one deal you were talking about, where like as soon as they said, "Do you buy as is?" You're like, "I know," like, and you keyed in on that.
Mhm.
It's so important, and I want everybody watching this video to really, just replay that part. That is so powerful. Like listening to how people like say things, their tonality, the pace, trying to understand like where they're coming from and really listening. So I remember when I got started, I had a mentor, and he was like, when you are, on the phone with people, like literally have a notepad, and it's more important like what they're saying. Like you
Yep.
want to know like like if they're talking about their kids and where they played baseball, like learn notepad. It doesn't have to be fancy. Like,
Yeah.
like you want to be such an active listener. And the problem is, if
Notes.
you ask people like, are you a good listener? Almost everybody will say yes, they're a good listener.
Yes.
And this is myself included. Like we can all be so much more of a better and more active listener. That's
Mhm.
a skill that like anybody really wants to improve, and it's going to benefit your relationships, your business, just everything. So
Mhm.
pre-qualifying leads, listening to what they're saying, how they're saying it, and not being afraid to have that just playful curiosity when you're asking them, these questions, because they are serious questions, and
Mhm.
knowing how to filter out the leads. But because you said all those leads that, they had it listed for 475 and they might want to sell for 440, 450,
Right.
we know that those aren't the deals. Like
Yep.
we are investors, we're wholesalers, we're trying to get this for a deal. So being able to filter through those quickly. So
Exactly.
let's kind of pivot here. So I know that you disclosed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you've crushed out some 30K deals. You've had a couple
Yep.
of 3 and 4 deal months. You're working with an amazing partner. You guys have the ability now to close on deals yourselves. And just all this has happened in the last year, and the confidence, the negotiation, and learning how to do this, in kind of a different market in Canada, right? So
Yes.
so that's kind of where you've progressed to, and like let's fill in the gaps there, Parker. What are some key differences that you think have contributed to you learning how to do this in Canada, and maybe obviously the title of this video, how to wholesale houses in Canada, just some key tips there for those who are
Mm.
interested in that.
Yeah. So just to clarify the question. So basically, what are tips for people looking to wholesale in Canada? Is that specifically or?
Yeah, just kind of filling in the gaps of how you
Mm.
got to where you are, as far as
Right.
in the middle there, and then just some tips, some key differences.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say the key difference is, I mean, we don't have title companies for one, so that doesn't exist here. So yeah, that will obviously change how you close, how closing works. I've had wholesalers, Canadian wholesalers, ask me, can you recommend me a title company? I'm like, oh, they've been watching, a lot of American wholesalers, right? And that's how I started. So I don't fault them for that. I had the same point of view when I started as well. So no title companies. Another big thing is the government here is uh, privacy is a lot tighter. Access to public records and going to the county courthouse and all that, probate records, forget it. It's not going to happen.
Hmm.
In terms of going in and getting access to figuring out, wills and estates or, properties that are going through probate. I think you were saying that you were able to do that at the county courthouse where you're from.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So that does not, you're not going to be able, I went to there was a probate office at the courthouse in Toronto. I went there and you had to know the exact name of the person. Like it was something so specific that there was no way I could do anything because I was trying to find addresses. You can do tax records. So you can look that up if you want to find people, who are you find a distressed property and you want to figure out the owner because they're paying the property tax and they don't live there because it's a hellhole. And then you can look up, oh, okay, they live on 123 Cherry Street, so I'll call them, and then you can go from there. So that's doable. Another difference would be what else? Notable differences. I would say not to be judgmental of Americans, or American sellers, but I think Canadian sellers are smarter than American sellers. That's probably a controversial thing to say, but what I mean by smarter is not that Americans are stupid, but I just think Canadian sellers they don't get into as many messed up situations as American sellers do. And if it's that, or it's also just that they're all like, they really are conditioned, work with a realtor. Foreclosures are not as common here. Foreclosures are almost like a pastime in the States, from what I've read. In Canada, it's like unheard of. Like foreclosure, there might get they're called power of sales here, but I think they're called, there's the short sale in the States. It's power of sale here, which is similar. I don't really, it's basically like a foreclosure, but we bought one deal, I think my partner did in a power of sale. But foreclosure auctions and stuff like that, and going to the courthouse and scooping up, finding clients there or deals, it's not a thing here. So like I remember I went to the courthouse once, and because when I was thinking in this mode, and I said, "Do you have any like tax auctions here that I could?" And they looked at me like I was a space alien. And they said, "Here, go to the Gazette." I'm like, "What's the Gazette?" And they pull up like this little piece of paper. It was like tissue thin, and it had like one deal out in a city in Ontario I can't even pronounce, and it was like some commercial property that it was beyond me, right? So there are those differences, and not to impugn the Americans. I love America, like come on. But I'm just making the point that I've noticed from what I've heard of from other Americans and situations they've encountered, there's not as many deals here in Canada, and also it's harder to find them for those reasons. You really have to put the money in. You can't really, like the Zillow and the FSBO. That's the other thing. There's not as many sites like that you can go to and find those deals that way. And what is it called, LoopNet and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. There's not as much third-party access to for sale by owners. You can do Kijiji, but everyone's looking at Kijiji really. So you really have to market hard, off market, put money into that, and if you're serious about it. And then those are kind of the key examples. And another thing is double close. You don't do that here. So there's the whole thing, right? There's assignments, because I think that you were talking about this in that video. Assignments, and there's double closing. So I don't think I need to go through that because everyone probably knows what that is now. But basically, we don't get the transactional funding thing. That doesn't happen here. If you're going to close on it, it's because you're going to close on it and you're going to flip it probably. You could close on it and then do a double close if you have a money partner. The negative is that there's a lot of another difference. And Florida, I know, has no state income tax. I don't know what their other taxes are like, but we have land transfer taxes in Ontario that are very high. And it's a bit of a government cash grab, but basically it can be upwards of 4% of the property's purchase price that you're paying on closing. So if it's in Toronto, it's typically around 4%. Outside of Toronto and Ontario is about 2%. So you're almost paying like 2 realtor commissions there. Almost. Well, I mean, you're not paying, the seller would be paying that, but you know what I mean? Like it's almost like a full realtor commission that you're paying to the government when you buy a property. So you need to have a lot of capital. So if you're buying a property for $450,000, no, you're not going to get that in Toronto. $700,000 in Toronto. Think of all the 4% tax, legals. What else am I forgetting? Insurance, like all that stuff. You're going to have to pay that. It's not just $700,000 that you're paying. So you have to get someone who's going to finance that. So it's not even worth it if you're trying to, even if it's $100,000 fee that you're looking for by doing a double close, because that's what I get people do double closes for, because they don't want to disclose what they're making, right? To the seller or to the buyer. Here you don't really do that. You have to close on it, and even by that point, it takes away the incentive of doing that because you're giving away so much money in closing costs that it just doesn't make sense. And the other thing on top of it is, from what we've done, all of our assignments, the seller never knew what we were making. We don't have to disclose that. Do they have to do that in the States? Does the seller have?
It's different in different states. A lot of times, there's double closings, there's assignments. I've pretty much traditionally always done assignments, and so I know there's a lot of people out there that teach like, oh, if the assignment fee is over $5,000 or $10,000, do a double close. I've always looked at it as like the buyer knows what I'm making, and even sometimes the seller will know what I'm making. So we have the ability to do like a buyer side HUD and a seller side HUD. So I'd say
Yeah.
80% of the time, or 90, the seller doesn't see what we're making. The
Okay.
buyer almost always sees what what we're making. And even if it's a 25, 30, $35,000 assignment, I make it very clear that like how much of an asset I am, like not in a non-arrogant way, but they get
Yep.
like, I want this relationship with Steven because like it's not just about this one deal, it's about a lot of deals. And the
Yeah.
savvy buyers that we're working with, they're not like they're not going to spoil everything over this one deal. They're happy I'm making 25 or 35 grand because they're
Sure.
probably making 60 or 70, and they know there's a lot more where that came from. So that's a question I get a lot from newer wholesalers asking. And I had the same question when I started, just kind of being scared if the seller or the buyer sees what you're making and stuff. So I just wanted to share
Right.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's
That's a good
really
point.
interesting. So some of those differences, between the States and Canada.
Yeah, and as we keep talking, I'm gonna think of others, but those are the really the key ones that are noticeably different. And I think as well, and this is not true of all of the states, obviously, because there are like I think Arizona or Phoenix and Houston are really, really hot markets right now.
Oh
Correct me if
yeah.
I'm wrong.
Yes.
Um, okay, so Toronto's insanely hot. It was really hot in 2017. That's when we had our phone call, and I was like, "How do I wholesale in a hot market?" That was one of my first questions to you. I remember.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of changes. Things have softened a little bit, but people still think like my home's worth this, right? So there's a lot of work you have to do with sellers to get them down, not to the point that, oh, I can make money. It's like even just to like MLS value. They really think their home is worth X. I talked to a guy today actually, over in Ontario, and he basically said, "Oh yeah, I think I want like 500,000 for it." And I looked up, I pulled the comps, and I'm like, his worth with realtors getting paid, it's like 330 or something. So there's work to be done there, right? So that's like a classic. So maybe Canadians aren't the smartest. I don't know, but you do get a lot of that where people just that they're and I get it, right? They want the most they can. I'm not criticizing them, but it's just like they think there's a lot of bullishness and people are generally speaking very optimistic about the market. So wholesalers have a bit of that challenge that they have to kind of talk down sellers a lot, and there's an art to doing that is
Yeah.
you have to learn it. You can't just say your home's not worth that, no, like,
Yeah.
and then bully them over it or try to tell them that they're wrong. You can't do it that way. You have to almost agree with them and then disarm it or diffuse it through some sort of like, you just have to basically, I can get into that, but basically that's what you do. Um, so yeah, those are definitely some of the main differences, I would say. So you're dealing with that a lot of the time. Toronto being super hot, hard to find deals, but which makes it though, when you do find a good deal, you can really make a lot of money on it because there's so much demand for a good deal in a hot market. So maybe it's a short, like you may get less deals, but your fees are a lot higher, and that is definitely true for us this year. We've done
What's your
pretty good,
average fee,
but
just out of curiosity, what's your average deal spread, would you say, ballpark?
so yeah, of course I've calculated that, right? I have done that. So I'm like, what is the average fee? And the answer to that, I can give you actually a hard number because I was doing it the other day. It's about 29 grand is our average fee.
Wow.
So that's pretty. I think that's high. I don't know what the states is like average wise.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say it's around 10 grand in the States. And obviously in different markets, you got Phoenix, you got Cali, the spreads can tend to be a little bit higher, but I'd say nationally, probably about 5 to 10 grand. And so that's the thing that I was blessed very early on when I started working with a mentor, just like we talked about earlier. It's no more difficult to do a $25,000, $30,000 deal. And actually those sometimes tend to be less stressful than the deal that you're making.
yeah,
Okay. So it
absolutely.
was early on ingrained into my mind, like, focus on some of the larger spread deals, being firm and conservative in your numbers. And
Totally.
like you're talking about 29 grand, I mean, that's a lot of times what people make in an entire year, and you're making that
It's
in one
one
deal.
deal.
And that's what I love about wholesaling. It's like, even if you want, like, if your goal is not to do this full time and to become some like multi-million-dollar investor like Grant Cardone or something, right? Like,
Mhm.
to be able to do 1 or 2 deals a month, that can change your life. It can change your family's life, and it's so powerful. You don't have to have some massive, operation. So,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
like
true.
that just has always been so intriguing to me. And the other
Yeah.
thing you said, Parker, I think it's important is, yes, there's a strategy, and kind of like you said, you don't want to just be, so combative, like when the seller mentions a price, but it's knowing how to filter those. And a lot of times it's not that we're going to say something magical, or we're going to like all of a sudden they were, you know, they have a $330,000 property, they want 500,000, and we talked them
Yes.
down to 200. Like it's doing the right marketing and learning how to filter through the leads, because a lot of those aren't going to be deals no matter what you say. But then there are those where they're kind of in that intermediate zone where when you do highlight some of the benefits, when you are actively listening, when
So
you
true.
are kind
Yeah.
of educating them on their options and kind of painting opposite ends of the spectrum, and you're letting them know, like, yes, you can do this, or you can do this, here's where I'm coming in, and you help them to, like, kind of politely, playfully and directly let them know kind of their options without desperation but with
Absolutely.
firmness. It's
That's
so
great.
powerful.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's exactly what you like. Yeah. Like that is, you have to basically, you have to be firm. That's the key, right? Like you need to seem like you do know what you're talking about, but you have to give, basically, I like to do, like, I'm going to call this guy back today, and basically this is what I'm probably going to say to him is, I'm going to say, look, I mean, I appreciate, that you think it's worth 500,000, and I've been told by a realtor to say this. I thought this was a good idea. It's like, I think if you wait 6 or 7 years with appreciation, it will get there. So basically, it's not even a snarky thing. Like you say, like, if you have time, do it. Like, I'm not, maybe it will appreciate. Obviously, there's a risk there could be a downturn or there's corrections, but you give them that option. Of course, he's going to say, I don't want to wait six. So great. So now you've got that off the table. So let's get to your what you really, let's get to reality now. So then I'll say, okay, so I think, once you've paid the realtors and you go through all the tediousness that you can highlight about listing, this guy has problems in his house, so you're going to have to do this with repairs and all this and pay for that. I think you'll net about this amount. And then I'm going to say, if you come with us, it's going to be this amount, but we're going to solve this, and this problem. And and those are genuine numbers, right? But
Yeah.
I'm going to give him the options, and basically, I've addressed so much value that
Mhm.
in his mental state is like, he's been honest to tell me what this house is worth. But I know so much now that I've been dealing with so many sellers. It's not necessarily about price. It really isn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they will be, if they like you and they trust you. This isn't always, like, I think this is genuinely fairly true, that they will go with you. Like they'll be willing, especially if that you've had a good one-on-one, a good conversation. Um, and yeah, they will sell to you at a discount all the time. Like this one we had, the one in on Cambridge, we got 30,000. That was a $30,000 wholesale fee. So we just assigned that. But basically, so the seller, she knew what her house was worth. Like there were no tricks, there was nothing. She knew it was worth, I think it was worth about 480 to 500 as is. And I told her, I said, look, we're not doing that. Like, we're investors. Here's everything that we're offering. I'm going to come once it's bought. Like, you don't have no more walking through if there's any other hassle. And I said, really, I'm thinking, like, I got to be 350 right now. And that was a genuine number. That wasn't even a low ball. From our standards, like, that's where we had to be.
Yes.
Um, and she said, oh, that's low. I said, yeah, I agree with you. It is low, but here's what we're doing. So yeah, I did the Grant Cardone thing, like, always agree. He always says, always agree with them, and then you amplify your value. So I
Yes.
kind of do that. And then this is so important, I think, for wholesale, is like, you always agree. Don't just even if they're saying something stupid, like, just agree with it and then amplify the value. And then that's what I did. So I went through her place, and we actually ended up getting it for 340 because it was worse than I thought. So
Yeah.
I'm nervous, right? Oh no, is this a good deal now? Like, I'm a little nervous because I thought it was going to be a little bit more turnkey. So
Yeah.
I actually got it for a better price, but genuinely thinking. So I got us probably an extra 10 grand in that, but me genuinely thinking, I don't think we can pay 350. So basically, I went back, and, like, I said, I offered them 325, I think, and they said, no, no way, we're not doing it. And I said, and the husband got up and left, right? So here's the emotional thing I'm talking about. So husband left, pretty much like, get out of here. And I just held court, and I said, okay, no problem. I appreciate that you want as much as you can. Just, can you give me a counter offer? She went upstairs to her husband, who had left the scene because he was mad.
Wow.
Uh, and then I went outside no, I waited there. Then she came back down and said 340. And I said, let me call my partner. So I went outside. I said 340. I explained the scenario, sent him some photos. He said, let's do that. That's okay. So I went back. I said, we're going to accept that. And then I think I said, we're going to make it conditional on partner approval, so my partner could walk through it, which they were okay with.
Hmm.
Um, so basically, yeah. So he went through. He was fine with it. We sent it out to the buyers list. Gone like that. Like we got it for 370. We assigned it for. And there was someone locally, I think, so in that area who really liked that market. It was a newer build, so
What was
not
the
really any.
ARV on that? Like, what was it worth? Like at top end?
Yeah, good question. So the ARV was top end, I think like 510.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of work though. It was like a 20, 30 grand reno. It was really just the kitchen. It was maintenance. That's what spooked me when I walked in, because I saw the beautiful comps, and then I walked in, I was like, whoa, like it needed a lot of paint. There was like big baseboards ripped out and stuff like that. So it just was an eyesore, which was again good for me because I can say, look, like you can't show this place, and there's dogs coming through. She kept telling the dogs to shut up. Like she didn't want. She wasn't even. She was a bit crabby. Like you know that she's not going to want to list it, and I knew that. So that's my strategy now. I give the offer. If they tell me to screw off, or even if they say no way, I say give me a counter offer. Because don't walk away. Like ask for something. Don't just like say oh okay and then leave. Because you have to ask the question. Maybe they don't like that price, but they will work with you on it. So
Yeah.
just ask for it. So I think if I had walked away, I would have lost the deal.
Yeah.
You have to just ask the probing questions. You don't have to be pushy or be like a con artist about it, but you're just being genuine. Like this is a negotiation. Like what are you guys willing to accept? I know the motivation's there, so they'll probably come down in price to what the point that it's going to work for me. But I went low enough. That's sort of what you're saying. Conservative enough, I should say, that
Yeah.
I could negotiate a little bit and we could get it done. So that was the strategy. And basically, what you're saying there was like run your numbers conservative. Also, our financing from if we do close is very expensive. We have people who our buyers have better financing than us, so it
Hmm.
kind of works because we can get it for these prices that genuinely work for us, but we can actually mark up our fees a bit because we know they have better financing. So that's kind of a beautiful thing. If you can find buyers, especially like cash buyers, who they're not interested in leverage, they just want to close, flip it, get their money out. They're not paying interest or any of that. It's good to be connected with those guys because it keeps down their financing costs. And I'm sure Stephen, are the majority of your buyers are they like what's the level of experience, and are they typically financing through private mortgages, or are they like strictly like here's cash, certified check or whatever, wire
Yeah.
transfer?
It's usually cash. We, try
Yeah,
to keep it as clean as possible and deal with direct cash buyers. There are those deals where maybe it's a tighter deal, and it's a little bit more challenging to find a buyer where we might entertain, if they have to get private money or something like that, or maybe the seller has, they're like, hey, we want 45 days or 60 days to get out. Maybe it's an elderly seller, and we
right.
have a little bit more time on the deal. But I'd say, overall, we're trying to deal directly with cash buyers, just keeping it very, very easy.
And a quick question as well. So, what are the values typically in Dayton? That's another thing.
Yes.
What's the price
So in
points?
my market, I mean, a lot of times we're dealing with houses between like with an ARV of 100 to 300. So,
Right,
we're not dealing with the super, super, super low end stuff, but we're not also dealing with the $500,000 homes and the really fancy stuff because a lot of times they want. So it's the middle of
right.
the road, like where
Perfect.
there's
Yeah.
neighborhoods with lots of houses, lots of sales, stuff like that is powerful.
Yeah.
One thing before I forget, I want to mention this, and this goes back to active listening. I
Hmm.
had somebody tell this to me. It always stuck with me. It's a lot of times it's not about the property. It's problems over the property. So problems
Yes.
over the property when you're listening with sellers. You want to identify a problem there. If there's not a problem going on, a lot of times they're not going to want to sell for a discount. So a lot of
Yes.
people are willing to, like you said, and I've had that same experience, they're willing to go with you for a lower price because of the speed, because of the convenience, and because they like you, because you were able and bold enough to present the value to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so remember that, guys, it's not always about the property and
Yes.
the features and stuff. It's about the problem that they're going through and the solution that you're bringing to the table. And so that's really important. And then I
And
had a similar story, Parker, when one of my first big deals I did was a 25K deal. I was working with a mentor at the time, very similar relationship that you have. And basically, I remember it was an estate, so it was a probate deal, and this was in Columbus, Ohio at the time. Um, I remember the executive of the estate was down in Florida, so we were talking a little Ohio State football, building some rapport. And I remember the deal was worth about 230, and I was coming in with it was in a really good neighborhood, great bones to it. It needed a decent amount of work, and I
mm-hmm.
remember coming in with a verbal offer of 110. And
Wow.
she got back to me a few days later. She was like, there was kind of that silence after I made the offer. And
Mm,
I always, will just kind of like wait it out and I'll let them say something. So there was that 30-second pause there where she was
mm.
pulling it over. And you want to make sure not to say something, like you want to
Yes.
let them process. Because a
Yes.
lot of times people will, and this is a huge tip, guys, for negotiation when you're talking with motivated sellers. A lot of times people will want to fill that awkward silence and just start talking, talking,
Oh,
talking.
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
You'll shoot yourself
So
in the foot. Like,
you
don't
do.
do it. Just shut up.
Shut up.
Like just
Yes.
shut up. Like it will help you so much. So I remember like I had to put the phone on mute and I'm sitting there pacing and she's like, you know what? It's a little low, just like you were talking about in your example. It's a little low. Let me think about this and I'll get back to you in a couple of days. But we had that rapport, but I could tell like she's legit considering this. And
Mm,
so I remember at the time, I filled in my mentor, what she said. And he's like, so we sent somebody out for pictures and video because this was virtually, this was a couple hours away. So we
yep.
had a good like maintenance man that would kind of go out to some of our properties and take video and pictures and send them to us. And so after seeing me inside, it was a little worse than she had described, which is very common. A lot of sellers will say, "Oh, it needs a little bit of this," and then you go in.
Yeah.
Sure, you've experienced this
Yeah.
before.
Only once in a while that happens.
Have you not?
Yeah.
And so like I remember like my mentor being like, man, this is a little rougher than we thought. Like honestly, like I think we have a ability to get a little bit bigger spread here, and we just want to be conservative. At the time, we were newer into this market, so we knew
Mm,
this was a good neighborhood, but we
mhm.
just wanted to be conservative. And at the time, I was hungry for money. Like I just wanted a deal. I was like, man, I don't care if I make 5K, 3K, 7K,
Right.
15. And so we were thinking we could wholesale this for 125.
Right.
And so I'm like, come on, man, like, let's not go back. Like, he's like, we need to go back to it. We need to be at 100. It's worse than we thought. And in
Right.
my head, I'm like, what are you talking about? No way. Like, 15K is fine with me. But I was like, you know what? Like, he's where he is, like, making over $500,000 a year for like 10 years straight. Like, I'm just
Awesome.
gonna shut up and just do what he says, and I'm gonna learn this and whatever happens. And so I decided to do that. And this was a powerful lesson for me. So I remember leaving her a voicemail, like, Mrs. Jones, like, and I forget what I said, but basically
Mm,
I set it up the best I could. And I remember just being silence for 3 days. And then I got the voicemail and
mm.
she's like, Steven, we've decided to go with your offer. We like you, 100K. You know what? This is a good deal for us. And it ended up being my first $25,000 deal. It was the same scenario, very similar scenario to what you described. And I appreciate that so much, Parker. That's such a powerful tip, of asking them, like, because look, like in your example, like you had the husband leave the room. They rejected your offer.
Completely. Yeah.
You could have gotten emotional and you could have hung your head and just been like, you know what, like this sucks. I missed this opportunity. And guys, that's when you hear business, when you hear wholesaling, when you hear entrepreneurship, a lot of people talk mindset, but it's such a powerful thing. You can't just sit there and look at a vision board and checks are going to show up in the mailbox. That's not what we're saying by mindset. Like you have to work hard and do the work. But if you're not strong in the mindset, you can really miss out on such, on the business and on the results. But you have to
Yes.
be willing to sit through the fire and just go through it and be okay with failing.
Yes.
And it's a powerful lesson. It
Yeah.
shapes, and that carries over in other areas of your life. Once you kind of develop that character and that skill and that whatever you call it, endurance is such a
Yep.
powerful thing. So
It's
anyways,
so
man.
true. No, no, that's yeah, that's dead on. Like, I mean, I'll give you a really truncated version of this is what happened. Another deal we had similar to yours in a way, but it was kind of the reverse. So what happened is I made the offer. It was one of the tensest negotiations I've ever had because I had like I could go over if you want me to. Basically, it was just
Yeah.
it was a family blind man selling the home. I made the offer. They basically told me to go outside, and they were going to talk. I came back in and they were so hostile to me because it turned out that the brother who was in the back room, who said nothing except when I left the place, he was in real estate, in real estate, whatever, and he was saying that we were like aggressively lowballing them, which we weren't. It's just because we're flipping, right? So the prices are just so different.
Yes.
So we came in and she was so hostile to me, like really my fight or flight responses were kicking in, which is so common, right? You're getting into it almost like a borderline argument. You want to like react or get out, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, hold it down, just stay calm. And I just agreed with them constantly. Yeah, oh yeah, no, yeah, you know what? You could sell this. They said, we know if we throw this on the market tomorrow, it'll sell for 140 because I'd offered them 80 grand.
Uh-huh.
And I said, absolutely, it will sell for 140. I can tell you that right now. I'm more than happy. I have a few agents. I'll call them up right now. We'll send you over. We'll get you guys listed tomorrow. I offered them like the out. Like I said, do it. Like I kind of called the bluff in a way. I think wholesalers need to do this a lot.
Yes.
Just politely, like just like agree and say, here's the solution. I can solve that. You want to list it? Here you go. And they said, and then they didn't obviously answer that because I knew that's not what they wanted. So basically, we went through a tense negotiation. He said, I'm sorry, I can't sell you my home. I'm only going to be doing 140 on this. I said, well, I'm at 80. We're far apart. If you guys could come down, I'm sure we could come to an arrangement. So kind of like planting that in them. And then they basically said, then he said to me, this is where the listening is so key. I'm not like, I'm getting better at listening. And, this is where I'm trying to, this is where I was like, listen. And he said to me, Parker, it also helped we had a film connection because he was in film as the old guy. So that helped. But he said, Parker, I'm not going to accept anything less than 100 grand. So I said, boom, he'll accept 100 grand. He just told me while maintaining his assertiveness, he told me that he's going to accept 100 grand and I could do 100 grand. So I was like, so this is what I said. I didn't say, how about 100? Because then I'm like, why did I go up 20 grand? I said,
yeah.
I said to him, so if I were to offer you 100,000, you would accept that? Not would you accept that? You would accept that? And he said, yes. And I said, and then the brother says, no, we're not accepting that. And then I'm like, oh my God.
I love it.
So he totally intervened and says, no, we're not accepting that. So the brother just totally screwed up. I left the property. I knew I had the deal. I was crushed because I'm like, that was brilliant. I was actively listening. I had the guy. We had a deal. And then I think majority, like me 6 months ago, would have given up on that deal. But I had made a good impression with, he loved me because of the film. We were talking about Brian De Palma. That's a film reference there. Lots of filmmakers and stuff like that. So he trusted me. There was that love there. The woman got along with me, the niece. So I had her number. He didn't use technology, the actual seller. She was representing him. So the next day I'm like beside myself, like, oh, so close. And I'm making excuses and, all this. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to text them and offer them, 6 grand more. But I think we can do it. So I said, would you guys accept 106? And I'm just like, I just text it, bing, like 2 minutes later, deal. And I'm like, wow, like that was huge. So like I went from a mindset of total, I'm a screw up in life, failure, like didn't get the deal done, to total like hurricane shift to it's happening. So that is so powerful. Like you really just altered the course of your life in a weird way in that little moment, because you thought you were a failure in the moment, and then you just made the snap decision that just totally turned to success. So if wholesalers are doing that, like don't give up on a deal. Like if you think it's gone, the only time a deal's dead, in my opinion, again, is the equity thing, or they really like they threaten you, because there's no place for that.
Right. Absolutely.
Or like that's ridiculous. Or if they say don't call me again, there's maybe an argument that you could still do that, could keep pursuing. But I basically don't want to get sued for harassment or anything. So if they say don't call me, I'm gonna stop. Absolutely. But but other than that, you just keep on them, follow up. And I think a lot of if I was like 6 months ago, I wouldn't have done that. But I just know more now. So I said, like, follow up, and then boom, and we closed on it. We're flipping it right now. We just finished the rent. I think we're finishing this week. So basically, the numbers there, just to quickly break it down, was $106,500 we got it for. We're gonna put about 20 grand into it. It's a really little dinky wartime house by the highway, not a great location, but we're gonna list it. It should sell in a week, low price points in this little town called St. Catharines, Ontario. And then we're expecting to sell it for about 170 to 185,000 in that ballpark. Yeah. So it's a nice little. We're hoping for a 30 grand spread there to make. We financed it pretty much ourselves, so there's no split with a money partner. So that's kind of how that works. So that's $30,000 lost if you don't do the follow up, right? So
Oh
it's
yeah.
those little decisions, right? You know, you can attest to that. Like you need to have, like you said, endurance and persistence is just so key. Like if you're starting off as a wholesaler, and I think it's the lack of knowing that might make you not do
Right.
that. But when you just know things, or just, I could just kind of prattle on about it. But
Here's like to piggyback on that, Parker. Like, so let's say the new wholesaler, they're doing tons of marketing. They're persistent. They are, let's say you've generated 100 leads, and just in this example, let's say all 100 of those leads, you're offering 80,000. Most of the sellers are like, no, we're at 140. We're at 140. Being willing to stand firm in the deal, and,
yes,
and so this is something like it feels like awkward at first, but just being able to be like, Mr. Jones, like, I certainly understand where you're coming from. And this is after you've built the rapport, after you've built
yes,
all that, please let me know if something changes. Like I said, here's where we're at, here's why. And then letting it go at that, they're going to simmer on that. And you're
exactly.
active listening. They came back, you basically learned that they would be at 100. So now instead of 140, and 80, as far as a $60,000 difference, you're only at a $20,000 difference, and you can bridge that gap.
Yes,
But even if
yes,
that didn't take place on these 100 leads, and this is what separates the rookie wholesaler that's doing no deals to the intermediate or advanced who's doing 3 to 4 large spread deals a month. If
mhm,
you're like once a month or once every 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long, if you're calling back all 100 of those people and you're like, hey, Mr. Jones, I was just giving you a call about the house over on Oak. I just wanted to
right.
kind of see where things are at. We're approaching the end of the year here. We just wrapped up another property. I wanted to see if something changed. I hadn't forgot about our conversation, and just shut up.
Yes,
That's it.
beautiful. That's
And then
great. I
you're
mean, that's,
listening.
yeah.
And then you're
Listen,
listening,
yeah,
and they're going to tell you something. And even if they're like, a lot of times they're so appreciative of the call. They're not like, hey, buddy, get off my phone. Like it,
right.
it usually doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
And just that little tip, you're not doing anything magical, but you're staying top of mind. You're actively listening, and you're continuing the conversation in the realm of follow-up. As far as tips for people watching this video, I think that's just, I wanted to piggyback on that.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. Like, never lose frame. Like, just be optimistic. You appreciate it. Like, I have it all the time. Like, I'm way apart. I offered the guy, and we were like 100 grand. This happens all the time in Toronto, especially
Yes.
because the transaction costs just go woo. So you have like you need a huge spread. They're wanting retail. Say it's worth 890 as is, right? This is as high as Toronto goes, like even higher. But 890, I can pay like 600.
Yeah.
Like, cause just genuinely, I'm not even like, I'm crunching the numbers. I'm like six, I think. Like,
Yeah.
because it's just, there's so many costs built in there, and I explain that all. And that only can go so far with the seller. They don't really get all of that. But they offer them that. And they go, what? Like, think about it. Like $290,000 under what they're asking. And by the way, we've gotten deals that we're that far apart. So if people are telling me
I believe it.
price is important, and we're 30 grand apart, it ain't, like, no. Like, it can be done. Like, I had a guy offer, like, he wanted 600. I think we actually lost that deal to someone else, but he was going to accept it for, sorry, he wanted 700, and we got it. We were this close to getting it for 520. This close. Like, it was
Mhm.
in the lawyer's office. We lost it at the 25th hour. It was crushing. But
Yeah.
basically, that shows you, like, it's not necessarily about price. If someone's really stuck with you on price, a seller, for all wholesalers out there, that means you're not showing your value enough. You really need to, like, even if you've said it already, keep saying it, and then do a spin on it. It's like a rap song almost, and then just like you
Yes.
can, something else that you're gonna do, or just keep emphasizing and addressing and just amplifying. I just can't say that enough, because when you keep saying something, weirdly enough, they'll go down. They will, like, work with you, and if you're nice about it, you're not just being a shark. You're like sort of
Exactly.
saying, like, hey man, I appreciate you want this much for your home, and I'm not telling you not to list. You could do that tomorrow. I can refer you to an agent. I'm more than happy to. But right now, to get this done, I'll come to your property tomorrow. I'm available. It's 2 o'clock work. I'll put this offer in here. I can tell you a ballpark. I like to say now a lot. No realtor can guarantee your home gets sold, but we can. We can guarantee it. Like, I'll come tomorrow and I'll buy it from you, and we can do that.
Yeah.
And we're taking the risk. The market could drop. So, like, and I'm saying, you could say, oh no, my home's worth this, but guess what? Tomorrow it might not be, and then my price is going to change. I'm offering you this much now. I can guarantee that price. I just
Right.
need to walk through it, yes or no. And that really works a lot of the time with sellers, because you reframe the argument. You're reframing their situation
Price
so
is
that
what somebody will pay for it. It's
yeah,
relative.
it is. It's completely relative to. I mean, there is obviously the market value, which you could argue that, but I mean, for what
Sure.
we're doing, you figure out their problems, and if their problems are more important than price, even if they wouldn't admit it, it's going to come through in what they say. It's just always, always. And we've got our best deals, or even the smaller deals where that was the case, and you had to just. It came out in their ability to negotiate, and that's true. So what Stephen, you were saying is that you don't waste your time with people that are just they're not looking for their problems to be solved. They want top dollar, and like really those are the people I really think you should just like not really follow up with. I mean, maybe once in a couple months, but
Exactly.
if you got a full pipeline like I know you do, Stephen, like you just don't have time for it. You
No.
have all these other quality leads, and I'm not saying never to give them a call and sort of what you were saying and be nice and ask, but genuinely speaking, if you're also providing a service, so like if you're not providing the service and the value isn't there, then it's actually doing them a disservice. So I just figure like if they figure out right away, always pre-qualify, determine if there's a problem. If there is a genuine problem that you can solve, and like attack it in a nice way. Like figure out how you can actually, make it, solve it, and then just amplify it. Get the price later. They'll object. They're always going to object. You might as well just give them your conservative number because they're going to object, guess what, to your best offer. Almost always. So do the
Absolutely.
conservative number, and they're going to say that sounds low. You say, I understand it sounds low. Amplify value. They're going to appreciate that, and then like I'd say 60 to 70% of the time you start negotiating, and then maybe like 50% of the time, or I don't know, I couldn't give you the math, but it could work out. You just have to be persistent and hang in there.
100%.
Yeah, hold court.
Because you have to value your time too. I mean, your time is so valuable. And those of you watching this who are doing this part-time, maybe you're in a full-time job or you're doing this full-time, you have to be relentless with your time. You have to really, place value on that. So
actually, Stephen, if I can ask you one quick thing, because I think this is value to your listeners, because I get this objection all the time, and you actually mentioned it in your anecdote there about that first deal you did, which actually worked out for you, but it is a common objection. I get this all the time with sellers. They say to me, let me think about it all the time. I got to think it over. I got to talk to my wife, or it's all the time. I had it the other day, and I think it was the first time I really actually overcame it and got a deal closed with someone saying, let me think about it. And I got it done on the spot instead of waiting a couple days. But a lot of the time, I think your listeners and wholesalers out there, if I like to go, if I go to look at a house and I don't get the deal done when I'm there, my odds of getting that deal drop significantly. Doesn't mean it's not.
100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
you agree with that? Okay, so like it's I don't know the number, but it drops. Like it doesn't say it's not going to happen; it just drops. So if you want to maximize your chances of obviously how much you're going to make every year and getting your deals done, you like optimize the time that you're with the seller at the property and make sure that you get as far as you can to the point that you think, okay, now I'm getting creepy or something, because you need to make sure like you really like almost push the seller a bit, like let's get this done. Like you said, my time is valuable. I've come out here. I also ask the seller, are you ready to sign if I come and we agree on price? And they say yes.
Ooh, I like that. That's super
Yes.
powerful. That goes in with pre-qualifying, right? You want
Yes.
to know like beforehand, like, are you in a position to do this now? Knowing where somebody is and their timeline and their process, and are they committed to doing something now, is so powerful. And another thing, Parker, that I'll do is I'll like let them know that very respectfully, but also very directly that, I am interested and this is what I'm laying on the table now, but this is not good, forever. And I also have my eyes on quite a few other properties because, and
Beautiful.
that's true.
Yeah,
Like
it's
I
true.
want them to know that I'm not desperate, that there's other fish in the sea that, and so I kind of put the pressure back on them, not in a sleazy way,
Yeah.
just letting them know, Mrs. Jones, I am looking at a few other properties. I can't keep this open indefinitely. I certainly don't want to rush you. Think this over. If there's something we can do today or you have any questions, let me know. If not, today's Thursday. Let's circle back by tomorrow or the end of this weekend because we just kind of need to know one way or the other. So I give them a little bit of a timestamp, just in the same aspect of a car dealership, a clothing store. Black Friday sales don't last forever. They're not.
Of course.
You have to.
Scarcity.
Naturally, a lot of times people are naturally procrastinators and they're just going to wait and wait and wait. So
Totally.
you don't want to be cheesy about it or weird about it, but giving people a little bit of a deadline or a timestamp can be powerful. And like you said, maximizing, the time that you're out there with the seller, because here's the little slogan that I would give, and people watching this may or may not have heard this, but it's simple, but it's true. Time kills all deals. So
Totally.
the longer it draws out in
So true.
negotiation and a lot of things, time kills all deals. So the sooner you can get it done, just get it done. And that's really powerful. So
like that's probably like the number one thing for if when you're getting deep into deals with now, because now, okay, now you figured out the marketing, you're getting leads, now you're going to these properties. There's a lot of steps here to getting it done. It's not just that accomplishing that. You have to now walk through with people, go through the sludge with them, walk through the properties, now do the negotiating. There's a lot of things you could screw up there if you're not really, experienced or you're doing this enough. So yeah, there's so many chances, where you really have to keep pushing with it. And that's so key when you're at a property. And sorry, you made a point there that I was trying to highlight there. But
time kills all deals.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so time kills all deals. So the longer a deal takes, and what Steven's saying is completely true. It's universal. Canada, whether in Canada or in the States, if you wait too long, it's not. I don't want to say it's not going to happen. I don't like saying that, but it just your odds just go doot, 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 like right down. Yes. Because it's just there's a reason. I think the reason they're stalling is they don't trust you, or there's something you're not showing value. It's something about you. It's not them.
Exactly.
You know. And you have to like just stop being, oh, the seller's so indecisive and be a victim. Like you're the problem, and like you need to solve that. And I'm dealing with someone right now. I take responsibility for it, but like she just cannot make a decision. I've been calling her. She yelled at me a few times on the phone. I didn't do anything, but I wasn't being as accommodating as I could have because she wanted a closing, and we actually couldn't do that. So I gave her a no, and she didn't appreciate that. Well, that was a mistake on my part. But you learn from that. But she basically got mad at me, and I was calm. I said, no, I'm happy to talk to you. No worries. Like, I understand you're stressed. So we haven't lost face. But my point is that it's a skinny deal, frankly, and it's been a pain. And I still haven't got it under contract, right? This has taken a month of being with her, and indecisiveness, and her lawyer made a mistake, or she claims he made a mistake. And, I know every day that goes by, like I'm supposed to call her today, in fact, that the odds are dropping. I'm not going to lose sleep. It's not a great deal, but it's enough to keep fuel in the car basically and keep on going. But that's just so true. And then the fastest deals, I'll give a really quick example because this is my best deal so far. It was a hoarder house in Toronto. Yeah, you know what I mean by that. Unshowable. Like, I'm not saying it wouldn't have sold on the MLS, but have fun getting a traditional loan for that property. It was a disaster. It was a haunted house. There was like a huge viney tree in the front that you actually, like, you couldn't walk to the front door without grazing it. Like, it was insane. So it was like a jungle there. And anyway, so it was a total disaster. She was asking a price that was ridiculously reasonable because she knew she was going through a divorce. She hated the ex-husband. He was in the house kind of just, not just the kind of a moss on the couch, basically. She wanted to get the house gotten rid of. She was working with me. I paid her full asking because she was already asking a reasonable price. I didn't do any negotiating on that. It was our best deal. And she was the nicest seller I've ever dealt with. She loved us. She said, oh, I want to meet your partner. He's like a celebrity to me. I want to meet him. And like, she did a testimonial for us. And that spread is insane. Like, what we're going to make on that. My partner closed on it. It was too good. Like, we said, no, we're closing. Yeah. So it was unbelievable. And that was easily the nicest seller. I got the lead through our lead generation. I called her up. I said, is this your price? And she said, yep. And I was like, holy crap. Okay. Just calmly. All right. So let's set up an appointment. Went out. And I'm not going to go up in price. And the reason I didn't do that, I could have, but I think it would have like, are you going to pay me more? And funny enough, that doesn't work with sellers. I really think, and it's not greasy.
I agree.
Like, it's actually, I've had people lose deals because they offered more.
It adds doubt in their mind, doubt, fear, and then that blocks them from going forward. I couldn't agree more.
And exactly. So if you're going, even if you have a screaming deal, I've had 3 of those this year, where it was a joke of how good of a deal it was. And I actually went 10 grand under. And the reason I did that is not because I'm a shark. It's because just the situation I was in with the seller and how we were talking, I just felt if I was at full asking or above it, they would have got just like, oh, I could get more, or what's going on? And I want
enough. Exactly.
Yeah, I was being genuine with them. I didn't feel like, I really felt like, hey, they're asking this and I'm giving it to them. And I felt, and I actually felt, if I knew I could go up in price and they would have accepted, I think I would have done that. But I just didn't. It was really about, I didn't want to lose the deal from being a nice guy. I mean, frankly, I know that sounds bad, but I've had people who offered the seller more and then they actually walked away from it. It's weird. But people don't appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a weird, like, kind of like
Human
pro tip.
psychology thing.
It's a
Yeah.
human psychology, and I think it's more of a pro tip for people when they really get in the trenches and they're gonna
Yes.
get them. They might get to those situations where it's like, wow, this is a screamer. I can offer them 20 grand more. Don't do it. Like, I'm telling you, unless maybe the seller knows what it's worth and they, for whatever they're asking, just that price. Maybe you can go up, but it depends how your feel for that scenario. But yeah, even you're nodding to that, so you get what I'm saying. Like, it's just
100%.
you really have to, like, yeah. But I mean, generally, you're going. You have to. They ask too much. You have to get them down in price. So
Yeah.
there are freak scenarios. So anyway, we closed on that property. And the point of all that, sorry, I go on tangents, but there's so much to talk about. But it's like, yeah, basically, the best deals take the shortest amount of time. And
Yeah.
I think that's almost a fact.
A deal is a deal is a deal, and a lot
Deal.
of times the best deals there, I mean, you just know it from the beginning, and so it just pays to do the marketing, stick through, have persistence, have endurance, be willing to filter through the leads, keep marketing, stay top of mind, keep talking with people. Parker, I want to be very respectful of your time here and those watching this video. This video, this interview, this video, I know has been so valuable. It's been, first off, a ton of fun. I can sense your passion for this business, for all the things that, the skills that are developed, talking with people, marketing, negotiating, building a business, and all of that. Before we go here, I do want to wrap things up. I know we're at like the hour and 20-minute mark. I have two final questions for you, and then anything else you want to add to. One is, I want to ask you, what is one tip for somebody new or intermediate that will help them in the lead generation department, whether they're in Canada or US? Just a little lead generation or marketing tip. And then what, from your film critic background, what's the best movie that you've seen recently? And then
Hey.
after
Okay.
that, man, let's, we'll wrap it up here.
Great. Okay, so see, the marketing is actually probably my weak point with wholesaling, because my partner does a lot of the marketing. So I'm not. I just get the intake of all the leads, and I'm kind of the sales guy, you could argue. Like, I'm always like talking to sellers, and so exactly pretty much what we've talked about for 80 minutes is what I'm doing.
Yes.
But the marketing, I would say, here's how I began. Like, and it didn't really work for me, but it's a good way to start, I think, to get your feet wet, is to drive for dollars. And do like bandit sites, like cheaper marketing, just to get your feet wet. People might disagree with that, but I just think, like, start off in also a market that you know. Maybe a neighborhood. Maybe you're not going to get a deal out there, but just go around your neighborhood, look at the houses. Okay, that's a detached 2-story. That's a bungalow. What's the price per square foot on that home? Like, figure out those things. Become an expert on your market, and maybe throw out some bandit signs. Put some notes in mailboxes. I did that. I didn't get any calls, frankly, but I know people who have got calls. And just kind of become like your little big fish in a small pond to start, and then branch out a little bit more. And I think expand your marketing, then start to pay for more. You're going to just need some money. I just think it's hard to be dead broke and start wholesaling. In my view, at least in Canada, maybe it's different in the States. I wouldn't, I could get your opinion on that, but I'll finish with this point. And then I just think, yeah, driving for dollars for sure. Bandit signs, scouring MLS. Hey, you're not to say you can't get a deal on the MLS, because you look for deals that have been listed for like 90 plus days. I'll find those. Why haven't they sold? Like, call up the agent. They want the freaking commission already. And you just talk to them and be like a nice guy, like we're talking about, and ask them the right questions and get an appointment and have a buyer lined up. We had one deal that we were so close to getting, and it was a screamer, and it was on the MLS, but it just didn't sell. And then the realtor we worked with made a mistake, and that blew us the deal. That was really annoying. But so my point with that is that you just go on the MLS, like establish a pattern of productivity,
Yes.
to start off, and then just, it doesn't even have to lead to a success necessarily, but it's just getting into it, like, yeah. And then I think that's what I would say. And then maybe you'll get a deal. You make it like a 10 grand. Don't spend it on TVs and stuff. Put it into marketing, invest it, and then you're gonna get better leads. And you're gonna make 20 grand maybe, and then you can start. That's some consumer money there.
Yeah,
But
and
then yeah,
for those that are interested too, and one of the first links in the description, I would invite you to opt into my boot camp and some free training resources, and I'm going to be sharing with you some different marketing things
recommended.
that work very well. And to your point, Parker, like I also believe in that. Like, yes, it definitely takes some money for marketing, but I believe you can, like you said, go after bandit signs, go after some of these free or more lower cost.
Yes.
And there's some creative ways, and especially those of you interested in building your wholesaling business in general, opt in below, and I'll be sure to connect with you and stuff. Because you don't need to go out there and spend tens of thousands of dollars. Like you can start where you're at, get that first deal or two done, and then you can start to grow and scale.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with that.
And if you're taking like something like Steven's boot camp, or you get the skills by doing something like that, one thing I could say is don't be worried about the competition, because I think that's another big thing. People are scared,
Yes.
or it's like, oh, there's so many. Look at all the people and the bandit sign. It's like, okay, are those guys actually good? Like trust me, like I've dealt with a lot of wholesalers. I'm not ripping on anyone, but a lot of the wholesalers I've dealt with have no idea what they're doing, and I sleep very comfortably at night. I wouldn't want to compete with Steven, but some of the wholesalers in my market they're noobs. Like they just don't get it. So if you're taking your boot camp and you're getting the skills and you get confident and you're doing what we're doing, competition's not going to matter. Like you're gonna be the dominating. People are gonna want to work with you.
100%. And like half the time they're going to resonate with you. Sometimes they're going to resonate with other people, but there's so many deals out there, and you just focus on keeping your head down, doing the work, building the skills, the intangibles that we're talking about. I cannot wait to publish this video. Like Parker, my man, you have given so much value, and just some of the stuff, like it's just exuding from you. I really appreciate the value here. I do want to
Yeah.
be respectful of everybody's time here. So before we go, man, any final thoughts, wisdom, tips, and
Mm.
movie critic in you? What's maybe the one best movie you've
All
seen
right.
in the last year, or even a couple, and we'll get this wrapped up, brother.
Okay, so I would say best film I've seen. Okay, how about recently? Because my memory is getting more and more short term. I would say I saw The Ballad of Buster Scruggs recently, the Coen Brothers film. That's excellent. It's playing on Netflix right now, so you can, if you have a subscription, you can watch it,
Okay.
or get the subscription from a friend. It's a comedic western. I don't know if you're familiar with their work. It's kind of like The Big Lebowski meets Oh Brother Where Art Thou meets True Grit. Those are three of their films. And it's just like it has lessons in it. Movies nowadays don't have ideas. They just are. It's special effects, or it's gimmicks, or it's just
Right.
the values in movies are just gone. I just don't see humanity anymore. So I'm watching this movie and I'm just like, this is teaching me something. It was like kind of like, I'm not gonna get religious, but I think it was kind of like reading the Bible. Like there was just lessons in it, and I thought it was like well, what's the word for it? Not an allegory, something that a story that teaches a lesson. I'm like kind of like a fable, but not with animals.
Right. Right. Has that?
Like
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like that was, I think, and it's an easy watch. It's go on Netflix, check it out. It's very accessible, even if you're like, oh, it's a western. Like it really is funny. It's four different short stories that don't overstay their welcome, and you get new different characters throughout the whole vignette of it all. And it's just thoughtful. It's interesting. I mean, I don't want to do a whole movie review if you make me, but I mean, it really is an interesting film, and I was surprised because I like their films a lot. They're one of my favorite directors, but I was a little skeptical because of like Netflix. I'm not a huge fan of all the Netflix content, but I thought that was like really above the line. And also, I just finished season 3 of Fargo, which is amazing. I'm not a big TV guy, but if you're watching TV a little bit, Fargo is like one of the best shows on TV, I think, right now. And that's also the Coen brothers, right? They did the original film from the 90s. So, I mean, I would say that, those are probably the big ones. I've seen a whole bunch of other ones, but they were kind of lackluster. Like I was mixed on Star is Born and some of those other ones, but,
Gotcha.
yeah, that one's accessible. It's on Netflix. Just watch it. And if there's any last tips about wholesaling, I think we've covered so much of it, but I just think a lot of it is just persistence. You need to train yourself to calm down and not be emotional. I think those are key. We've highlighted those. And once you like, the marketing is one form of art, but once you start getting the deals, just be a good person, be genuine, no tricks, no games. Tell the sellers how it is. Don't lie. Don't lie. Really, I mean, it's just toxic. I mean, there's certain things that you could not tell them. That's different. That's different than lying. You don't have to tell them what their house is worth. You have no responsibility to do that. I just do it when I'm as leverage in a weird way. It makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, just be honest, be truthful, help actually try to solve their problems before thinking about how much money you're going to make on the deal. Figure
Mhm.
out where your value is first, harness it, and then the money will come. I guarantee it. It's not a get rich quick, but I can guarantee you will get results if you have that mentality. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, Parker Mott, my man, it has been it's been awesome talking with you here, this interview. So those of you watching this, thank you for coming out, checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel here, hit the little notification bell, and to connect, you can subscribe. Parker, if there's any connection, website, email that you want to have on here for people, definitely I can put that below too. But yeah, those of you interested, you can subscribe to the boot camp. I do offer a free strategy call, and if you have any interest in working together. But Parker, my man, this has been one of the most impactful interviews I think I've ever done. This has been amazing. So I appreciate your time and just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Like I said earlier, this is like exuding from you. I can tell that you're passionate about it. You're making a difference in your market. You're doing the right thing. You're helping people. So I just want to encourage you, man, as we end this year, go into the next, to keep doing what you're doing. And I appreciate you big time. So thank you, everybody, for checking out this video, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cool. And if I could just add one more thing about promotion while I'm here, is not to crowd it out, but I would say if you are in Canada and you are looking for get on our buyers list, by all means, go to ibuyhousestoronto.ca. That's our main website. So, and also if I can put a little pin in what you said about your calls that you do, like can't recommend
Yes.
like call this guy, call Steven up. Like I did that. That was one of the first things I did when I really got into wholesaling and was trying to find my way. And Steven really helped sort of, even though we weren't in different, we were in different markets in different countries. He kind of said, Parker, do this way. And then I kind of was like, oh, okay. And then that really helped guide me to start off. And obviously I've had other mentors since then, but yeah, I can't recommend you enough, Steven. It's been great talking to you.
Oh, man. Well, that means a lot, brother. So thank you so much. And all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and end it now, but y'all take care, okay?